No one expected this. After everything, the Bartlett-Fleming family has survived the heartbreaks, the storms, the losses. Nothing could have prepared fans for what happened in Heartland. Season 19, Episode 4. It wasn't just another emotional scene. It was a moment that stopped time. The kind of moment that makes your chest tighten and your heart ache as if it happened to someone you know. The kind of loss that reminds us why Heartland has always felt real. This wasn't just about a death. It was about change, destiny, and the painful truth that sometimes even the strongest hearts can break. Asterisk at the start of Episode 4. Everything felt almost peaceful. The golden fields of Hudson were quiet, the horses grazing under the morning sun. And Amy's voice carried that same calm we've come to know over the years. The ranch looked alive again. You could see it in the way Amy smiled when she watched Lindy ride. In the way Jack sipped his coffee like every morning was a gift. For a moment, Heartland felt safe. Like the wounds from the past few seasons were finally healing. But that peace was the kind that comes before something big. The kind that makes your stomach twist without knowing why. The episode's tone slowly shifted. Small things started to feel heavier. Jack's long stare toward the open field. Amy's quiet moments when she looked at Spartan with watery eyes. Even the music felt different, softer, sadder. Like the show was whispering that something was about to happen. Then came the scene that fans can't forget. The one that changed everything. It happened so quietly, so unexpectedly, that for a second you didn't even realize what you were watching. One moment there was laughter. The next, silence. That kind of silence that fills every corner of the screen, making you forget to breathe. The show didn't need dramatic music or slow motion. It was raw, real, and heartbreaking. The reactions from the characters made it even harder to watch. Amy's face froze as if her mind couldn't catch up with what her eyes were seeing. Jack's hand trembled when he reached out, his voice breaking as he tried to stay strong. Even Tim, usually full of words, could only stand there, his eyes wide and lost. It wasn't just a loss for them, it felt like a loss for us too. For fans who've watched these characters grow for almost 2 decades. This moment hit like a wave that drags you under before you can find your footing again. What made it even more powerful was how natural it felt. There was no warning, no dramatic buildup, no predictable twist. It was sudden, unfair, and real, just like life often is. That's why Heartland stands apart from most dramas. It doesn't rely on shock for attention. It takes the simplest moments and turns them into something deeply human. And in that episode, they did it again. They reminded us that loss doesn't always come with a warning. Sometimes it just appears, and the only thing left to do is face it. But what if there was more to this than just tragedy? What if this wasn't just a random story choice, but something the writers had been planning for a long time? The small hints scattered through earlier episodes now start to make sense. The emotional looks, the lingering shots, the quiet conversations about change and letting go. It all starts to fit together like pieces of a hidden message. In the next part, we'll break down what really led to this heartbreaking moment and why this death might not be what it seems. Because in Heartland, nothing ever happens by accident. Every tear, every silence, every goodbye carries a meaning deeper than we think. Asterisk, it began in the quietest way possible. No dramatic thunder, no warning cry, just the wind moving through the trees and the soft sound of hooves against the dirt road. That's the thing about heartbreak in Heartland. Doesn't knock before entering. It just arrives quietly, like the moment before a storm when everything feels too still. Amy was out near the pasture, her hand brushing against Spartan's mane, her mind somewhere between memories and the present. The light was golden, the kind of light that makes the whole world look warm. Even when something cold is waiting just around the corner. Jack was nearby, fixing a broken fence, humming to himself, unaware that life was about to change in the space of a single breath. Then it happened. That one moment, the one every fan still replays in their mind. A sound that didn't belong. A gasp. The horses startled. Amy turned and her world shifted. The camera didn't rush. It stayed still, almost respectful, as if even the lens knew this wasn't a scene to dramatize. It was a moment to feel. The look on Amy's face said everything. Confusion first, then disbelief, then the slow, unbearable realization that something terrible had just happened. The death wasn't loud. It wasn't even fully shown. But it was felt so deeply that the silence after it became heavier than any words could describe. Jack dropped what he was holding, the sound of metal hitting the dirt echoing through the still air. For a second, time didn't move. No music, no dialogue. Just the wind and the sound of Amy's breathing as she tried to understand. What couldn't be understood? What made this moment so unforgettable wasn't just who died, it was how it happened. The simplicity made it real. No foreshadowing of danger, no last-minute rescue. Just life, doing what life sometimes does, breaking without reason. And maybe that's why fans found it so shocking. Because Heartland has always shown that even in a place filled with love and healing, pain still finds its way in. Later in the episode, the ranch felt different. The air heavier, the sunlight dimmer. Every corner carried the shadow of what was gone. Amy moved through the house like someone walking through memories, every photograph now holding more weight than before. Jack sat on the porch, his coffee untouched, his eyes lost in the distance. No one said the word out loud, but everyone knew. And that's where Heartland's writing truly shines. They didn't need to spell out the tragedy. They trusted the silence to do the talking. The emotions weren't forced, they were lived. You could see grief, not through tears, but through stillness. Through the way Amy avoided looking at Spartan as if she couldn't face the reminder of all she had already lost. Through the way Jack's voice broke when he finally spoke. We've been through hard times before, but this one feels different. Different. Because this wasn't just a character's death, it was the end of a chapter. One that had been slowly closing since the beginning of the season. A quiet goodbye that the story had been preparing us for without us even realizing. In this episode, loss didn't arrive as a plot twist, it arrived as truth. The truth that no matter how much love surrounds us, some things are beyond our control. And yet, even in that darkness, Heartland leaves a flicker of hope. Because in every ending, there's a promise that healing will come again. Not right away, but someday in the next part. We'll look deeper into why this moment had to happen, how the writers built toward this tragedy with subtle clues, emotional echoes, and the kind of storytelling that reminds us that even pain has a purpose. Asterisk, every story has a heartbeat. And sometimes, to remind us it's alive, it has to break. That's what Heartland did in Season 19, Episode 4. The death wasn't just a twist, it was a message. A painful, quiet reminder that growth often comes with loss, and that every goodbye in this show carries something more than sorrow at first glance. The death seemed cruel, almost unnecessary. Fans questioned it, wondering why the writers would take away someone so loved, so central. But when you look closer, you realize this wasn't random, it was deliberate. Heartland has always been about cycles. The changing of seasons. The way people and horses heal, move on, and find peace. This death was part of that natural rhythm. It wasn't about Shakit, it was about transformation. For Amy, this loss was the moment that forced her to face the last pieces of her past. She had carried so much grief quietly, from losing Ty, to holding her family together, to pretending she was okay when she wasn't. This episode stripped all that away. The person who died represented her final tie to an old version of herself. The version that still lived in memories instead of moments. Losing them was like losing her safety net, but it was also the push she needed to step into something new. Jack's pain, too, had layers. For him, every loss is a reminder of time. The one thing he can't fix with his hands. When he looked out at the land after it happened, you could see it in his eyes. It wasn't just sadness. It was reflection. He's always been the anchor of Heartland, but anchors can't hold forever. This death reminded him, and us, that even the strongest souls must learn to let go. Behind the scenes, there's a creative reason too. The writers wanted to return the show to its emotional roots, real, Human loss that doesn't exist just to shock, but to mean something. After nearly 2 decades, they know Heartland isn't about drama, it's about truth. The truth that families break and rebuild, that love doesn't protect you from pain, but it helps you survive it. If you go back and rewatch the earlier episodes of this season, the clues are there. Conversations about change. Small lines like nothing stays the same forever. Even Amy's growing restlessness around the ranch felt like quiet foreshadowing. The story had been preparing both her and us for this moment, we just didn't see it. Because when we love a character, we believe they're safe. But in Heartland, safety is an illusion. The beauty of the show lies in how it mirrors life, fun, predictable, fragile, and heartbreakingly real. When that episode ended, something strange happened. The world outside Heartland went quiet too. Social media timelines froze for a moment, fan pages filled with disbelief, and comment sections turned into places of mourning. It wasn't just an episode anymore. It felt like a shared heartbreak, the kind that makes people pause mid-scroll, their eyes heavy with the same ache Amy carried on screen. Fans from around the world began writing messages, as if they were saying goodbye to someone they actually knew. Some posted pictures of the character who had passed, paired with words like, "Thank you for growing with us," or "You made Heartland feel like home." Others couldn't even find words, they just shared crying emojis or clips from old episodes that now felt like memories frozen in time. That's when you realize something rare. Heartland isn't just a TV show. It's a piece of people's lives for longtime viewers. This death reopened old wounds, the loss of Ty, Marion, and so many others who shaped the ranch's story. But instead of turning away, fans leaned in. They talked about how the show helped them through their own grief, how watching Amy and Jack survive heartbreak gave them strength to do the same. The pain became something that united them, the way family pain often does. Even the silence in the fandom carried weight. Some fans admitted they couldn't finish the episode right away. It felt too real. That's the magic of Heartland's writing it. Doesn't just show you grief, it makes you feel it. You don't watch from a distance. You live it with them. When Amy stood alone in the barn that night, you could almost feel every viewer standing there beside her, silent, remembering someone they've lost to. Critics called the episode one of the most emotionally honest hours in Heartland's history, and they were right. It stripped away all the safety the show had built over the years and left us raw, exposed, and strangely thankful. Because through the heartbreak, there was beauty. In the tears, there was truth. The kind of truth that reminds us why stories like this matter. They don't promise happiness, but they promise healing. What made the impact even stronger was the subtle hope that followed. In interviews after the episode aired, cast members spoke softly about change, growth, and the importance of facing loss head-on. They didn't spoil anything, but their words carried warmth, as if to say, "This isn't the end. It's a step forward." That's what the audience needed to hear. Because when a show becomes a part of your life, losing a character feels like losing a friend. And yet, like real life, the story moves on. It's carrying pieces of those we've lost within it. Online discussions turned reflective. People weren't just asking why this happened, they were asking what it meant. Some fans saw it as a way for Amy to rediscover her strength. Others believed it symbolized a passing of the torch, a reminder that every generation must eventually let go of the one before. Whatever the interpretation, one truth remained the same. Heartland had made everyone feel something real again. And maybe that's the greatest impact of all. In a world full of stories that fade by morning, Heartland stayed. It reminded millions that even when life takes something precious, love doesn't leave with it. It lingers in the laughter we remember, the lessons we keep, and the courage we find to face tomorrow. The episode may have ended with loss, but what it left behind was connection. Between fans, between generations, between hearts that beat a little heavier but a little stronger too. Because grief shared is grief softened, and in Heartland, every heartbreak becomes a bridge that brings us closer together. Asterisk, it's strange how the truth hides in plain sight. When you look back at the earlier episodes, you start to realize that Heartland had been preparing us for this loss long before it happened. The writers didn't shout it, they whispered it. Through glances, pauses, and moments that felt ordinary at first but now burn with meaning. What we thought were small details were actually quiet warnings, stitched carefully into the fabric of the story. Think about the way Amy started talking about change in the first few episodes of the season. Her words carried a kind of calm sadness, like someone who already knew that something was ending. When she told Lindy, sometimes people leave, but their love stays. It sounded like a gentle life lesson for a child. Now, it feels like a message to all of us, an emotional hint of what was coming. Then there was Jack. The man who has always seemed unshakable suddenly became reflective. His stories around the dinner table were no longer about old ranch memories, but about time, how it slips away. How it changes everything. In one scene, he looked out across the ranch and said, "This place has seen a lot of goodbyes." At the time, it just felt like a sentimental line. Now it feels like foreshadowing in disguise. The kind that sits quietly until you realize what it really meant. Even the camera seemed to know. Something we didn't. There were longer pauses on faces, slower pans over empty fields, and lingering shots of the barn at sunset. The tone was gentle, but beneath it, there was a soft ache. A visual goodbye that none of us caught until it was too late. That's what makes this episode so powerful. Rewards you for paying attention, and it hurts you for missing the signs. And then there was the music. Heartland has always used its soundtrack like another character in the story. In this season, the songs became more reflective, filled with lyrics about endings, change, and letting go. The melody that played in the background of episode 2 returned in episode 4, the same tune, but slower, sadder. It wasn't just music. It was the sound of goodbye echoing quietly through the season. The writers didn't want to shock us. They wanted to prepare us. But in true Heartland fashion, they did it with tenderness. They didn't draw attention to the clues. They hid them inside everyday life. Because that's how loss works. In reality, it never announces itself. It lives quietly in the moments before, in the things we overlook, in the smiles that feel just a little too forced. Looking back, it's easy to see the pattern now. Every episode this season revolved around closure and finished stories finding their end. Amy healing old wounds, Lou confronting her fears of change, even Tim trying to make peace with his past. Each thread pulled tighter until episode 4 brought them all together in one heartbreaking knot. The signs were everywhere. We just didn't want to believe them. And maybe that's what makes this kind of storytelling so beautiful. It mirrors life. We rarely notice the goodbyes until after they've happened. Only when the world falls silent do we replay the moments and realize the truth was right there, waiting for us to see it. Heartland didn't just give us a twist, it gave us a lesson in awareness. To pay attention to the small things, because they're the ones that mean the most. The simple smile before someone leaves. The last sunrise that feels ordinary until you realize it was the final one shared. This episode wasn't about death alone, it was about the hidden beauty of farewells. The way endings are quietly written into beginnings. And as painful as it was, that's what made it unforgettable. In the next section, we'll explore what lies ahead for the family now that this chapter has closed, how grief will shape their choices, how love will rebuild the broken pieces, and how Heartland will once again remind us that even after loss, life keeps finding a way to grow after the heartbreak. There's always a stillness, the kind that makes you notice every creak in the floor, every whisper of wind through the fields. That's where Heartland stands now. The ranch feels different, not because the land has changed, but because the people have. The empty chair at the table, the untouched cup on the counter, the horse that waits at the fence for someone who isn't coming back. These small details carry the weight of everything that's gone. But in true Heartland fashion, from that silence, something begins to grow. Amy wakes up before dawn again. Not because she's ready to face the day, but because she doesn't know what else to do. The barn has always been her refuge, and now it's her reminder. Every sound, the flap of a bird's wings, the rustle of hay, The steady rhythm of Spartan's breathing feels like a heartbeat, keeping her connected to what's left. There's grief in her eyes, but there's also strength. The kind that doesn't roar, but endures. Jack, meanwhile, has gone quieter than usual. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for comfort. He sits by the fire in the evenings, turning his hat in his hands, thinking about how many losses a person can carry before the weight becomes part of who they are. Yet there's something steady about him. Something that tells you he'll find a way to turn pain into wisdom, like he always has. Because Jack knows that the only way to honor the people you lose is to keep living in a way that would make them proud. Lou throws herself into work, pretending she's fine. But there's a scene brief, almost invisible, where she stops mid-sentence. Her voice breaking, her hands trembling just slightly before she pulls herself back together. It's not about weakness. It's about love. The kind of love that leaves fingerprints on your life even. When the person is gone, and then there's the ranch itself, the heart of everything. It's seen death before, and it's seen rebirth. Seasons change, foals are born, storms pass. The land endures. That's the message Heartland is sending now. No matter how deep the wound, healing isn't a miracle, it's a process. One sunrise at a time, one step forward even when it hurts. But something else is shifting beneath the surface. You can feel it in the writing. The story isn't just moving on, it's evolving. This loss has opened the door for new beginnings, new relationships, and new emotional layers. Maybe Amy will find a way to teach again, not just others, but herself. Maybe Jack will finally share the stories he's been keeping locked away. Maybe the ranch, instead of being a place of memory, will become a place of renewal. Because that's what Heartland has always been about. Growth through grief. It doesn't promise happy endings, but it always promises honest ones. The kind that remind us that every time something ends, something else quietly begins. And as fans, we're left standing alongside them, hurting, remembering, and hoping. We know the pain won't vanish by the next episode. It'll stay, shaping every decision, every look, every quiet moment around the dinner table. But that's how it should be. That's how real healing looks. Messy, slow, but full of love. When the dust finally settles, the Bartlett Fleming family will still be standing, not untouched, but unbroken. Because Heartland has never been about avoiding loss. It's been about learning to live with it and finding beauty in the broken pieces. In the next part, we'll close with something deeper. The heart of what keeps Heartland alive after all these years. A final reflection on why, no matter how much it hurts, we keep coming back to this ranch, this family, and these stories that remind us we're not alone. Asterisk, there's a moment at the end of every storm when the sky softens, not because the pain is gone, but because you've learned to breathe through it. That's where Heartland leaves us in the aftermath of this loss. The grief doesn't disappear. It settles like dust on an old saddle, reminding us of what was and what still remains. Amy stands by the fence one evening, the sunset painting the fields in a golden haze. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The look in her eyes says, everything lost, love, strength, and the quiet acceptance that life will never be the same again. Spartan nudges her shoulder, and for the first time in days, she smiles. It's small, fragile, but real. That's the thing about healing. It doesn't come with fanfare. It comes in whispers, in moments that feel almost too small to notice. Inside the house, Jack watches from the porch. His eyes are tired but warm. He knows what Amy doesn't yet. That grief never truly leaves it, just changes shape. It becomes part of the land, part of the stories, part of who they are. The family gathers for dinner, a few chairs emptier, but the laughter slowly returns. Broken, yes, but still together. That's the beauty of Heartland. It doesn't promise that everything will be okay. It promises that even when it's not, you'll find a way to keep going. That's what makes it more than a show. It's a reflection of life itself. A story about falling apart and finding your way back. Not once, but over and over again. And for the fans, this episode will linger. Not because of the shock, but because of what it meant. It reminded us that love doesn't end when someone dies. It becomes a memory, A lesson, a piece of us that keeps beating quietly inside. The death that felt like an ending was, in truth, a beginning step into a new chapter that none of us can fully see yet, but one we trust will be filled with the same honesty and heart. That's carried this story for 19 seasons. When you think about it, that's what Heartland has always been teaching us, that loss is not the opposite of love, it's proof of it. Every tear shed, every goodbye whispered, every silent sunrise on that ranch is a reminder that to feel deeply is to live fully. So as the camera fades out and the music plays one last time, you're left with that quiet octokine that hurts, but somehow heals at the same time. Because even though this chapter closes, the story of Heartland keeps beating on in the land, in the family, in us. And maybe that's the real reason we keep coming back season after season, not for the joy, not for the comfort, but for the truth that every ending, no matter how painful, is just the start of something new waiting to grow in its place. The ranch will rise again. The sun will shine on those fields once more. And somewhere in the quiet of the morning, Amy will smile not because she's forgotten, but because she's learned to remember without breaking. That's not just the end of an episode. That's Heartland. Always finding light even in the darkest corners. Always reminding us that love, no matter how many times it's tested, never really dies.